Good morning, everybody. We're going to get going with our program today, and I know you were all really enjoying that music, and I'm sorry to interrupt that. You were probably getting right into that music. I know it's very catchy, and you probably won't get that tune out of your head this afternoon, but we've got a full program for you today. My name is Arup Mukherjee, and I am currently the chair of the Ottawa Valley branch of the Ontario Public Works Association. And I'm pleased today to bring you a fairly detailed program here. Whoops, sorry. And I'm just going to go through this as a highlight today. So we're going to lead off today. Batting first is going to be Robert Delatola, who's the associate professor at the University of Ottawa. And he's going to talk about something that you may have seen on the news recently about wastewater and surveilling COVID-19 through public health use in Ottawa. We're then today's agenda is mostly around Ottawa. We're gonna venture a little bit outside of Ottawa to the county of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. And Ben Dehan, the county engineer there, is going to do an overview of some roundabouts that they've built out in that part of the world. We're gonna come back into the heart of the city, and Damon is going to talk about the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Stage 2, a huge undertaking here in the city. And we're going to end up with Elizabeth talking about municipal waste management. So thank you all for joining us this morning. It's a lovely morning here, and I hope it is wherever you are. I mean, what else would you be doing today? You're certainly not golfing or playing basketball or playing tennis, although I do understand that those activities will be resuming very soon. So hopefully you've had a minute to grab your coffee and refreshment and settle down to get going on our first presentation. And I would just ask that and remind people that the format we have today, if you use the Q&A button at the bottom, I would encourage you to ask those questions while the presentation is happening, while it's fresh in your mind. We won't be answering them till the end of the presentation, but I find that when a question comes to you, it's always good to write it down. And then at the end, we're prepared to answer your questions. So on that note, we're going to get going here on our first presenter. So Robert, if I could ask you to put your screen on and just put your mic on as I read your bio. So Robert is a associate professor at the university. There you are, Robert. Good. Is an associate professor at the University of Ottawa. He is the associate director of the Ottawa Carleton Institute for Environmental Engineering. His research is focused on biological wastewater treatment and based on an interdisciplinary approach that applies microbial, I'm not sure if I said that, Robert, correctly, methods to improve wastewater treatment technologies. So on that note, Robert, I'll switch my screen off, and if you could put your start sharing your screen and run with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you to, so thanks for that. Thanks for the introduction. And thanks in general to OPWA for having me here today and giving us the opportunity to present on some of the work we've been doing in terms of wastewater testing for COVID-19 surveillance in Ottawa. So this work has really been performed by the University of Ottawa, but also in direct partnership and collaboration with the TO Research Institute, but also in partnership with the City of Ottawa and people who work in the public works sector there, especially the water and wastewater divisions. Pavel, Tyler, and also public health has been great partners for us in this work, the Ottawa Hospital and the Public Health Agency of Canada. Really a collaborative project is what I'm going to be presenting on today. So these are the people in our labs who are actually processed and were able to supply the data that I'm going to share with you today. So a big team, lots of people, everything from undergrads to masters to PhD students to technicians, research associates, and postdocs, all the way in between. So that's the team that did the work that I'm privileged to show you today. So as described, I'm going to talk about this idea of standing up this new tool of looking at COVID-19 signal within wastewater, which may seem a little odd. Wastewater-based epidemiology, so this method of looking at wastewater to understand infection or disease in a community is quite historic. There is quite a history there. It's been used for polio for over 25 years in many countries. But obviously with COVID-19 coming about, with the pandemic, we had to take that tool and take that knowledge and then adjust it so that we can actually monitor SARS-CoV-2. And that's what we did in Ottawa. And the reason we were able to do that is that ultimately COVID-2, we figured out quite early, is fecally shed. So when you go to the washroom, you contribute to that signal within the wastewater where we're testing it. So a little bit about what we've been doing and how Ottawa looks like. So we have, since April 8th, 2020, so over a year now, been looking at the wastewater treatment plant in Ottawa and testing the signal of SARS-CoV-2. Again, fecally shed within the source system. All of those systems lead to one central wastewater treatment plant, the ROPEC, wastewater treatment plant, Robert O. Picard Environmental Center here in Ottawa. And what you see on the screen, and for those of you who are working within the water and the wastewater world, would be familiar with this SOAR map that you're seeing in front of you. And you see some blue numbers on that map, and those blue numbers are the residence time, or the approximate residence time of how long it would take it would take the wastewater to flow from that location all the way to the central wastewater treatment plant. Ottawa is about 1 million people. About 910,000 of that million are connected to the source system, with all of that wastewater flowing to one central wastewater treatment plant. So one sample from that plant allows us to get an idea of the signal of COVID-2 in the wastewater for about 910,000 people. Still quite effective in that regard. So what you see on the top left of your corner now is, that's the overview of the ROPEC, the wastewater treatment plant. And below that, you see the treatment train of that wastewater treatment system. A lot of different units. Basically, when we started this project, we had no idea if we'd be able to detect COVID-2, so the virion or the genetic code of the virion within the wastewater. So we looked at 5 different locations within the treatment system. And we took 3 of those locations and we broke them up and fractionated them into suspended solids, into filtered solids, and into filtrate. And we tried to figure out where exactly can we find this signal of the virus. So we eventually figured out that the viral signal that's fecally shed ends up partitioning to the primary sludge. So that's where we ended up looking for the virus within the wastewater treatment plant. And again, if you have any questions or anything, just a reminder to please type them in the QA/QC function at the bottom of your screen. I'd be happy to answer them right after this. So looking at the primary sludge in Ottawa, again, we're looking for COVID-2 signal, so a complete virus, but we believe that within wastewater, and again, we're kind of learning as we're going, as everybody is within the pandemic, we believe that the virus exists in this fractionated or broken up state. So we're looking for the genetic code of that virus, the RNA. It's an RNA virus. So we're looking for that RNA within the wastewater. And we take the primary clarifier sample. We used to take it once every 2 weeks. Then we started to sample every week. We went to every 2 days. And now we're sampling every single day, 7 days a week. And we're reporting those results 5 days a week directly to public health at the same time that the clinical data numbers are being reported to the epidemiologists at Ottawa Public Health. So primary clarifier being sampled, we take that sample, we centrifuge it, we try to get at the solids because we know that the COVID-2 RNA fraction adheres and partitions to that solid. We extract the RNA, the genetic code, and then we do, we quantify it. We do an RT step where we transcribe that from RNA to DNA. And then we amplify it millions and millions of times so that we can see it. And that's how we measure the COVID-2. It's the PCR step is the same step they use for clinical samples when you get your nasal swabs to be tested for COVID-19. So basically the same instrument, just a modified methodology in order to see it in wastewater. What we also do is this weird additional step of looking for what I've written here as PMMOV. PMMOV stands for pepper mild mottle virus. So it's a fecally shed virus that many of us fecally shed. It's the highest known fecally shed virus we know of right now that's shed by humans. And basically, if you eat peppers or tomatoes or hot sauce or numerous different vegetables, you will digest this virus and fecally shed it. And we normalize our signal in the wastewater for PMMOV because it's, wastewater, anybody who works in this field knows how variable it is. There's day-to-day, there's diurnal effects, there's rainfall, there's combined sewers, there is different matrix changes, there's industry activity that changes day-to-day. So that matrix changes all the time. So we wanted to be able to get a concentration, so we normalize for this, what we call fecal biomarker, which is this pepper mild mottle virus that we all fecally shed, or many of us fecally shed. So now going on to the data. So this is the data from April to June 2020. And you see two graphs on your screen. The gray data is percent positivity. So back in April 2020 and May 2020, there wasn't a whole lot of testing rolled out yet, or during those early days in the pandemic here in Ottawa. So the number of new daily cases, that metric that we're sort of used to today, seeing on the news and hearing about, wasn't really very reliable because there simply wasn't enough testing going on. So at that time, the public health unit was actually leaning on percent positivity. So that's what I have graphed here for you today. And you have your gray data is the percent positivity. The orange and the blue are the CoV-2 signal in wastewater. Now there's an N1 and N2. We look for two different portion gene regions of that signal within the wastewater, and it's the N1 gene region and the N2 gene region. And you can see on that top graph that the copies per liter of our CoV-2 signal doesn't really correspond or correlate well with the percent positivity. But if you follow that red arrow and you go to the bottom graph, now we've changed units. So percent positivity, clinical metrics stays the same, but now we've presented the data as copies per copies of that PMMOV, that fecally shed biomarker. And now we start seeing a completely different trend in the CoV-2 signal. And we are seeing that there's relation between what we see within the wastewater and what we see clinically. So that was very promising. That was a big lesson learned for us in this project. So now I'm going to share with you, this is the data, the subsequent set of data from, my apologies, from June to August 2020. And what we see are three different graphs. The top graph really shows you that N1 and N2 gene region, again, in wastewater. The second graph now shows you number of clinical tests, daily new cases. And by the time June came around, there was enough testing in Ottawa where daily new cases became the metric that was sort of being shared with the public and what Ottawa Public Health was using again. And finally, the third graph at the bottom is hospitalization. And if you look at all three graphs, the first thing you'll notice is between June and about the middle of July, things were going great in Ottawa. Very, very low case numbers, also low detection in the wastewater. And then on July 17th, we had this 400% increase in the concentration of CoV-2 within the wastewater. And we saw that rapid increase, and that was really the start of the second wave here in Ottawa. But we only saw the clinical case numbers really increase on July 19th, 2 days later. So we started to learn at that point that, hey, this is our first indicator that wastewater testing might be an early detection system compared to clinical testing. Everybody fecally sheds, people don't have to go get tested, it's involuntary deposit, and ultimately, you could fecally shed before you really start feeling sick, and maybe you think, okay, maybe I should go get tested. So we were able to see a 2-day advance in terms of the second wave in the wastewater, and it was 2 days based on testing every 2 days, so it might have been a 3-day advance. We don't know, we didn't take enough tests to know that. But that advance, of course, came before the clinical test case numbers, but also came before hospitalization, which is really expected. So now if we go forward a little bit and we look at the data set in its entirety, and this is the May 2020 to the May 2021 data set, and you can see a whole bunch of data points on your screen. There are orange data points, that's the wastewater data. The blue, the teal data points, that's the number of new case data. And then there's some red data points actually on the screen too. And those are data points that we collected during snow melt effects. So when we had the snow melt here in Ottawa, and we think that that affected our signal, and that's a whole nother presentation and conversation. So we've identified those as red. We put, there are lines, there's 7-day rolling averages, because there's a lot of noise in the data sets, in both the clinical data sets and in terms of the wastewater data sets. You see those orange lines. So I like to show this graph because I like to show people the fact that you know, there is a significant amount of variation. Even though we're still normalizing for this fecal leachate biomarker PMMOV, there's still significant variation day to day within those data points in the wastewater, as there is variation within the clinical testing too. So if we just now look at the 7-day rolling averages, so we take away all those data points, okay, this is the 7-day rolling averages. Again, orange being copies per copies PMMOV, that's the wastewater signal. And the teal, the light blue being your case numbers in Ottawa. So what did we really learn? We've been doing this for more than a year. And so the answer is, okay, so what? You know, is this something that's useful? Has it shown to be useful? What has it really done? Well, the first thing is we think that it's building the tool that could be used for the future for different infectious diseases, continuing the progression of that knowledge. We learned, like we talked about in July, that there's an early detection of the start of the second wave. And then another point that we learned was that even though the wastewater tracks the clinical data really well, sometimes there's certain times when it doesn't, and there's certain distinctions. And I think that's the most important, and that's the most interesting times. And the first time we really saw that distinction was right around Thanksgiving. And you could see that the signal was going up, and the wastewater signal was going up in number of new cases per day in blue. But then the case numbers per day started to level out and go down. And it started to level out and go down right when we introduced a transition to appointment-only testing. So the testing numbers changed within the city. And when those testing numbers changed, right when they changed, we leveled off the case numbers, they stopped going up, and then they started to decrease as the number of tests per day started to decrease. So it was really, so Ottawa Public Health at that time was wondering, well, is that representative of the number of daily cases, the number of tests we're doing, or is it really representative of infectivity within the community? But during that time of plateauing and leveling off and decreasing, the wastewater just went way, way, way up. So you saw distinction. The wastewater is obviously not contingent or based upon people going to get tested. And so you saw a distinction at that point. And that was at that point seen as a distinction because we think it can complement what's happening with the clinical testing. And it was used to triangulate that information at the public health unit level, which we were very grateful for and happy we could help with that. And then we went into a modified phase 2 at that point, shortly after that particular phase. Another example is in early December. So in early December, we saw a rise in the wastewater data while the clinical case numbers remained flat. And while these numbers in Ottawa remained flat, the case numbers in many regions in Peel and York and Toronto were really going up. And it was at that point in time that there was a discussion of whether Ottawa should actually go into a stay-at-home order and go into further restrictions or not. And it was at that time that the provincial government used the wastewater in Ottawa data to say and referenced it in terms of its climbing trend to say that no, Ottawa will be shut down along with the rest of the province. The wastewater data has also been used quite a bit by Vera Etches and her team. Vera is fantastic. We're so grateful for her in Ottawa. She's the lead medical officer in Ottawa, and you could see her. Here's a tweet of her, asking for restraint and to the public and showing the wastewater data increasing. Alex Munter, the CEO of CHEO, is seen here again tweeting the wastewater data. It's going up and asking people to be cautious in their activities. A third example of when the wastewater was used and seen for public health is seen more recently at the end of February to March. And again, it's the same story. The clinical test data was not really ramping up very much, the number of new cases per day, while the wastewater was really rising. And once again, that wastewater data was used by Vera Etches and Ottawa Public Health to kind of ask for increased social distancing and to inform the public that maybe there is more transmission, maybe there is more community spread. And Ottawa Public Health has a great Twitter feed, and they actually were asking for people to be diligent with the increase in the wastewater at that point too. So one other aspect of our work here in Ottawa in terms of the wastewater is we also were fortunate to work with the Ottawa Public Hospital and be able to put that information online. So Ottawa Public Health has been very generous to inform the public and show that data, and it's been linked to 613covid.ca. You could go check that out. There's about somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 views a day of the wastewater data in Ottawa, and it's being viewed all over the world, which we think is great. It helps promote the science, push the science, but also inform people about what's happening within the community. Since we've been working on this project for over a year, we've also moved beyond just a wastewater treatment plant in Ottawa. We're testing 3 specific communities in Ottawa, and we're testing 2 locations at the University of Ottawa campus in order to disseminate information and kind of see if we could catch trends within certain hotspots, particularly within the community. Another point that we've been working on is the variance. So we're hearing so much about the variance of concern, and of course this is very concerning. And so what the first variant of concern we worked on was the B117, that's the UK variant. And we were very fortunate in Ottawa and CHEO to actually develop the assay to measure B117 within the wastewater. And that assay is being used all throughout Canada. And excuse me, what you see on your screen is a graph on the left. And you could see early days when we used that assay, we were getting non-detects for this D3L signal. And that it was in Ottawa at the time when there was no known cases of B117. There was an outbreak at that time, unfortunately, in Barrie, Ontario, and we were able to get sewer samples from there and wastewater samples from there, and we were able to detect the variant within the wastewater. We were also able to sequence that wastewater data and be able to see the data, see the variant within the sequenced wastewater signal. And if we look at how that assay and the data from that assay looks across time, this is what that would look like. You have your time scale on the bottom, and you have your you have your data shown, and the data that's being shown is a fraction of total signal. So basically, the fraction of how much of the signal corresponds to the UK variant relative to the total wastewater signal. And you could see we weren't really detecting much until the middle of March, and as soon as we started to detect it, that's a very rapid increase. And you can see right now the dominant variant that's being shown up in terms of the wastewater in Ottawa is the UK variant. And that's consistent with a lot of places in Ontario. So with that, I just want to thank OPWA one more time for the opportunity to come and speak with everybody today. And again, to thank our partners. Once again, this is really a collaborative work. It's really because of the City of Ottawa, their whole team at the wastewater treatment plant, everybody in the sewer team, and also public health. Also, thanks to the province. The province has come in January and has funded this project. They brought $12.2 million through the MECP to fund this all across Ontario. So I think hopefully you'll hear more and more about wastewater testing. There's now 13 different universities doing this. We're doing over 120 different sites. So very happy, and hopefully it's going to make a difference and build a tool that will help keep us healthier and safer in the future. So thanks again.
Thank you, Robert. And I think you did have a Q&A slide that you wanted to land on at the end. But I did see a couple of questions. I think there's 3 questions. So Barb, if you, Barb's here to assist us with the questions, and also from the Ottawa Valley branch. So Barb, if you could maybe turn on your video and work with Robert to answer some of these questions.
Sure. Hi, Robert. Yeah, as Arup mentioned, we have 3 questions that have come in. So the first question is, what method was used to time sequence the time it took to get to the plant? We have been trying different ideas, but minimal success. I noticed you have the hours from a subdivision to plant.
Yeah, so thank you, Barb, for that. That's a great question. So that really, that information was given to us by the City of Ottawa. I believe, correct me, I may be wrong, but I'm happy to send that information off to the city to get the exact answer. But I believe it was a study done by Stantec, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was an individual study to get those residence times that was performed within the sewer systems in Ottawa, and they were kind enough to share that information with us.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, do vaccinated people shed the virus, i.e. more asymptomatic or little health risk, but numbers will increase as we open up?
Yeah, great question. So, and I think this is, you know, hitting a nail on the head for us working in this field and trying to kind of keep developing this tool and understand the usefulness of this tool. So as vaccines roll out across Ontario and throughout Canada, we're going to see how that's going to change the wastewater cycle. So if you're vaccinated, just the vaccine itself will not lead to fecal shedding. Any of the vaccines that you get will not lead to fecal shedding of the virus. So we will not detect viral signal because people are vaccinated. But of course, vaccination should affect the viral signal because hopefully less people will get more people will get less sick, or less people will be sick. So in that respect, yes, it'll affect the signal. We know that vaccinated people can still be sick. You know, which is unfortunate, but that's part of the reality of what we're living in. So if they are vaccinated and they still are sick, there's a possibility that they can fecally shed. There's also, with the new variants, potentially change in fecal shedding rate. So the new variants, if there's an immune escape and then it's not really, or vaccine escape, so it's not affected by the vaccine, you know, then obviously if they're sick, they would fecally shed, and that shedding rate might actually change also.
Okay, thanks. Our next question, I noticed that you had the snow melt affect the data. Would heavy rain events also affect the signal?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we did this for a year, and we looked at heavy rain events. We thought it would, and we weren't able to see heavy correlation between heavy rain events and actually an affected signal. But snowmelt really changed the hydraulic loads, and it changed the hydraulic load within the pipes. And in fact, in Ottawa, we have some storage tunnels, and there are additional kind of tunnels that are used. We have a South Ottawa tunnel that's actually used very rarely, but only during really the highest and peak flows. So when those structures were engaged, those storage tunnels and that South Ottawa tunnel was engaged, we think that what ended up happening was the sedimented, the solids that sedimented to the bottom and were there with that significant high flow. We think that we pushed a lot of those solids into the plant and into the primary clarifier, and that's why we were we saw our signal be affected. Whereas large rain events during the year, we really couldn't see any real effect or correlation between those and the signal.
Perfect. Okay. Our last question is, for those of us that work in wastewater, if the virus, is the virus transmissible from the raw sewage?
Yeah, and this is a very important question. And so we think that with all the knowledge today, we don't think that it's very transmissible at all from the wastewater. In fact, we don't think it's infectious. We think it's a portion of the virus, and this is what the research is showing more and more today. So the fecally shed virus in stool, we think is largely not infectious. At least that's what the research is showing. And definitely within wastewater, there hasn't been any known tests that have shown infectivity within the wastewater of the virus. So that's really great news for those who are working with wastewater. So we're able to detect it, but again, we're detecting just that genetic portion of it, and we think it's fragmented and therefore not infectious. There's more and more research being done on this, but that's our understanding today.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert, for a very interesting presentation and being on the leading edge of a lot of the work that's going on out there. It's great to see Ottawa to take the lead on this and be working with all of the agencies. So thank you so much for your presentation. And I might be repeating this a bit today, but on behalf of all our speakers, today we are making a donation of $150 to the food bank here in Ottawa. So that's as a way of saying thank you to you, Robert, and to the folks here in Ottawa. So thank you very much for your presentation and taking the time to present today. And goodbye. All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker now. And Ben, if I can get you to come on screen and share your screen. There's Ben. So Ben is going to do a presentation about roundabouts in Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. And transports can like them too. So yes, trucks are also friends of roundabouts, and Ben's going to talk a little bit about that. So Ben, oh, I didn't read your bio there, Ben. So let me, before you start, I'm going to go back on and just finish reading your bio before you, so people know what the heck you're about. So Ben is a licensed professional engineer and a county engineer for the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. As county engineer, Ben is responsible for the overall management of the roads department, which includes design, rehabilitation, and maintenance of approximately 1,000 kilometers of roads and 200 bridges. After obtaining his degree from McGill University in 2003, Ben started his career as a municipal engineer at a local consulting firm. Ben left consulting in 2009 to work at Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. So Ben, take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to say this in the most complimentary way. I hope my presentation is as crappy as Robert's was, because that was very interesting and really, really neat to hear. So thank you. So thanks very much to Arup and OPWA for inviting me here today. It's always a pleasure to come and talk about the rural county of SDNG and some of the things we're doing, and I look forward to sharing some of our information. So I will get this presentation rolling. Here we go. First thing I wanted to do was just make sure I acknowledge the right people. First acknowledgement is to Robinson Consultants, who did the design for the roundabout projects I'm going to talk about today. Of course, our staff, wonderful staff here at the county, were responsible for the construction administration, did a great job making sure those things were built as designed. Our local municipalities where these roundabouts are constructed, both South Dundas and South Stormont, and I do need to shout out to the contractors who worked on each respective project. Willis Kerr and Cornwall Gravel, who understood the importance of these projects and what it meant to our communities, and made sure that they were constructed in a manner that allowed us to keep traffic going and keep things moving. The takeaway that I want everybody to come away with from this presentation is that whenever we are looking at roundabout designs, and in SDNG at least, I can't speak for everybody, but when we're looking at roundabout designs, we certainly consider commercial vehicles in all aspects of the roundabout. And that means right from the initial thoughts of implementation through the design, the construction, and then the ultimate operation of those designs. So I love this picture because it's a great picture of SDNG and kind of what we're all about. Here's a obviously agricultural transport moving through one of our quaint villages here in the county. For those that don't know where we are, we're United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. We share a part of a boundary with the city of Ottawa, just at the south end of the city. Ottawa's Bank Street turns into our County Road 31, and if you keep driving south, you'll end up in the St. Lawrence River at the end of County Road 31. We share most of our border with Prescott Russell. The St. Lawrence River is along our south border, and we go right to Quebec. So we have quite a large geographic area. We're an upper tier municipality, so we're essentially the regional government for our six local municipalities. The county itself was formed in 1850, and I'm showing a sketch of that original building that was built, the county courthouse. That was built in the mid 1800s. And that's where we are today. So that sketch was pretty decent representation of the office that I'm in, and I'm right now sitting in the office that's hidden by the tree that's in that picture. So a beautiful place to work, a beautiful place to live. As Arup mentioned, the county itself, we manage about 1,000 centerline kilometers of roads. We have about 200 bridges. And one of the big parts of our job is issuing permits. We issue about 500 over-dimensional permits, so that's anything above and beyond the requirements or what's allowed in the Highway Traffic Act. And so that just goes to show you that safely and efficiently moving goods is a big part of the service we provide to the people using our roads. So about me, I'm the county engineer. I've been the county engineer since 2009. That's me doing some multitasking at my desk. My claim to fame, according to the editorials in the newspapers, is I'm the roundabout king, because since my time here, we've implemented several roundabout projects, 3 to date, with a 4th one, which is out to tender right now. So for all the contractors listening in, I'd encourage you to go on Bid and Go and take a look at that project. We'd love to get a bunch of bids for construction this summer. We've been really, our roundabouts have been converting conventional signalized intersections or intersections of concern to roundabouts for various reasons. And that's really what I'm going to be discussing today. And the challenge that we've faced in doing that work is making sure that those roundabouts work for all of our road users. So the design, when we're looking at it and trying to implement it, we're talking about the cars that use it, the commercial equipment that uses it, the occasional agricultural equipment that uses it, as well as the cyclists and pedestrians and other users that we would have. So first project I do want to talk about is the Iroquois Roundabout, and this is the first roundabout that was constructed here in SDNG. The site itself, this slide kind of gives you an overview of the project. It was located at the intersection of County Road 1 and County Road 2. We have about 15% truck traffic going through this intersection, so it's a higher amount of truck traffic. The intersection itself, you can see County Road 2 is on a curved alignment, and that was why we actually looked at this intersection for a roundabout. Is we had a high incidence of accidents as a result of that curved alignment and some of the geometry and visibility there. The intersection was slightly skewed as well. As you can see, it's approximately 59 degrees. You could see that on County Road 1, we had tried to do some realignment to try and square it up a little bit better. County Road 2 is a through road here, and County Road 1 was stop controlled prior to the implementation of the intersection. We had sufficient right of way, so we were lucky in that respect. We didn't have to worry about property acquisition because of the large nature of the property. But we did have some utility constraints. There were some high voltage wires there, but fortunately, the way the design panned out, we didn't have to do any relocation of that. One of the big considerations here, and of course I kind of alluded to the truck traffic and the high percentage of trucks going through this intersection, is we had quite a bit of heavy vehicle generation in and around this area. We had there is a logistics company that was located in the northeast corner, a manufacturing company and feed mill in the southeast corner. So a lot of trucks were coming from those sites. And if you travel on County Road 2 westerly, it goes towards Cardinal, and there's a large corn starch manufacturing company there. So a lot of trucks would come off of Highway 401, which is located just north of the intersection, and use County Road 2 to get to that location. Of course, the impact of the skew of the intersection has a big impact on how trucks can navigate it. And then, of course, and how the design, how Robinson approached their design. So when you look at a skewed intersection, of course, that right-hand turn in that skew is the big problem. And it really requires a turn path that's 40% wider than you'd need in a normal conventional intersection. And so to accommodate that, there's a bunch of things that the designers would look at, something like widening out your entry and those kinds of approaches. But we were concerned by doing that, we'd create some other safety issues, in particular by widening it up. And if you had that much asphalt to cover that whole turn path, what you'd end up with is a roundabout and an entry that looked like a 2-lane entry, and we certainly didn't want that. So to Robinson's credit, they came up with a very elegant solution, which was to implement external aprons on this roundabout. So you can see in the conceptual sketch as we were developing this design, those gray shaded areas are those external aprons that we thought would function as a way to accommodate the trucks without sacrificing the paved entry lane. And so the combination of the two is what trucks could use to actually navigate that intersection, because the predominant turn off of County Road 2 was both north and south in those directions. So we wanted to make sure we could accommodate it. And that's what our design ended up with. And you can see kind of in this, the design drawing for the intersection in the southwest and northeast corner, the final design for those tapers. And really those tapers were customized based on the turn paths using turning templates. So, you know, those kind of tools were very, very useful and proved to be very, very useful as the design progressed. In the construction itself, the things went very, very well, and this was constructed by Willis Kerr Contracting. As you can see in some of these slides, of course, when you're constructing a roundabout, it's always the staging is always a challenge, because you're trying to do curbs, you're trying to continue to maintain traffic through the intersection, and we did have some challenges whenever we were doing the aprons because of some of the curbs. And we ended up, you know, to the contractor's credit, we figured out ways to accommodate commercial traffic by having them, instead of trying to make the right-hand turn, we had them go through the intersection to lessen the path, their trailer path. So that was those are kinds of the strategies we implemented as we constructed it. It was finished in August 2017, and this is an aerial view of the intersection at the cost of about $1.2 million. And of course, I love this shot because you can really get a good feel for those aprons that were constructed as part of it and how they really blend into the overall finished product. And while I was out there with the drone that day, I was lucky enough to capture a truck approaching the one quadrant. So here's how it actually ends up functioning. And you can see the truck, you know, slows down enough to make a safe entry, makes full use of that apron, and continue on their way without needing to stop or create or have a very sharp and I guess, you know, it helps. It certainly, you can see how it helps. At the end of the day, and I do want to say and give credit to Robinson again, they won an award of excellence because of this design, and very prestigious award through the Consulting Engineers of Ontario. So we were proud to be a small part of, well, I guess to be a part of this project. Next project I want to talk about is in Long Sault, which is a little bit more in the south central part of the county along the St. Lawrence River. In Long Sault, we had again, County Road 2. We have a different design context. It's really right in the middle of the village and the separation between the village and the waterfront of the St. Lawrence River. High potential for future development along the south end. The County Road 2 was controlled by traffic signals at County Road 35. At County Road 36, it was a stop control onto County Road 2 with residential, recreational, and institutional uses that are on County Road 36 or accessed through County Road 36. Some site photos just to show you what the intersection and the road look like. You can see it's a very much a, County Road 2 was a former highway, and it was a vehicular centric design back in the day. That was the main route between Montreal and Toronto. So much wider and much more robust design than it needed to be based on the traffic counts. We have about 10% truck traffic there. Whenever we were starting this project, we were approaching the end of the service life for the curbs, medians, and we took a look at the overall, you know, how do we want to approach this project and what it means for the community. And that's why we landed on redoing the cross section through here to a more urban design that incorporated separated medians to help with traffic calming and implementation of roundabouts. So it was more a community centric approach to why we wanted to do this and end a service life rather than a safety concern. I do want to point out, just for context as well, this pole here. This pole was the bane of my existence through this whole project. So anytime I can vent about it, I try to do that. The design itself, very conventional. We made sure we had, again, the separated medians, a lot of landscaping elements to it. Design of, you know, trucks obviously were designed, and commercial traffic was thought about throughout, as well as pedestrians and cyclists and all of those. Yeah, and I do want to point out that's where the pole was in the final design. We knew that it was going to be a problem for us, which is why we pre-consulted with the the electrical authority, well in advance of the work, with the intention of making sure that was relocated before we started. One nice thing with the design of these intersections and these roundabouts here, the predominant truck movement was north to south. We do have access to the 401 at County Road 35, so going north from this intersection. And County Road 2 is an EDR, so emergency detour route for the 401. But what we did as the design progressed, we confirmed our truck turns through all the quadrants. It was checked, all the movements were checked with templates. And again, we shared some of those lessons learned from Iroquois on how to stage it to make it less painful for traffic to move through it. Started after the long weekend, and Cornwall Gravel was our contractor here. We were able to maintain 2 lanes of traffic throughout the whole project, which is actually one of the things of that large platform that I showed you on the existing drawings, is that, or the existing roadway, was that large platform did give us a lot of flexibility. We reused what we could, so a lot of the storm infrastructure, some recycling of asphalt, and our price for this project was $2.2 million. Of course, every construction comes with challenges, and here we are, an aerial view of a 401 detour because of an accident, and our contractor having to try and work with 401 traffic operating through the middle of their construction zone. So that was certainly a challenge. And I know I mentioned this stinking hydro pole. Here it is again. You can see how it's right in the way of the work and still in our way. Fortunately, we were able to get it out of the way just before we opened, but it did require us to have to detour onto local roadways just because it was a problem for us in finishing the work. And I'm still having nightmares about this traffic or this hydro pole. Last challenge we had in the construction of this project was just that final connection with hydro. We had all the poles and all the lights ready to go, but it did take a significant amount of time before we were able to get those final connections, but we did, and the end result was fantastic. Here it is. You can see this is the intersection of County Road 35, so Moulinette and County Road 2. Again, you can kind of see in the aprons how the truck traffic is tracking up onto those mountable aprons. We've accommodated pedestrians in every way we can, as well as cyclists, so AODA compliant, and we've got pedestrian crossings. We've improved access to the Long Sault Plaza and improved the landscaping and created just a beautiful, what I think to be a beautiful section of roadway. And that's what our final landscaping at the roundabout at County Road 36 and County Road 2 look like. And you may ask, how does it work with large commercial vehicles? Back to the over-dimensional stuff, absolutely fine. This load was approximately, I want to say 12 meters wide, roughly. It was a mover that was moving a house. And in the design and in the actual maintenance and operation of this thing, we can certainly accommodate fairly significant loads. We've made use of things like removable signs. You can see the yield sign. If you look very closely, it's right laying down here. We can remove the base and accommodate loads like this. And this was an example where we just had the OPP hold the roundabout, and the house was able to move right through it. So just final thoughts. I've been to a lot of public meetings about roundabouts, and I want to say that the most important thing is to highlight the benefits to the users. I haven't been to one public meeting where those that are involved in commercial activities haven't said, you know, you got to make sure you think about trucks and those things. So it's important to highlight that there are less delays and stop idle times with these roundabouts. Now that we have experience with them and can show kind of what our design standard looks like, I think it helps to mitigate some of those concerns. Certainly they're much safer than a conventional intersection, and the statistics since we've implemented these roundabouts certainly demonstrates that. And you should be designing for the road users. So there is, you know, think about the people that are using it and how you can accommodate them, and make sure that you check to make sure that those vehicles and users can use it, and plan for them during construction. Make sure you've got some ways and and strategies to accommodate all those things that might arise, like a telephone pole in your way. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Ben. I'll just ask Barb that we do have a few questions here, so I will ask Barb to jump in and facilitate those questions. Thank you, Barb.
Ben, our first question for you is, for the Iroquois Roundabout, was consideration given to channelized right turn lanes for the heavier truck movements?
Yes, it was actually. That was something we had a really good debate about, and we landed on not including that, and for the simple reason that we wanted to simplify that intersection as much as possible. And with a channelized right, we had concerns that it would just, create another movement that that would be, I guess, create some confusion to the intersection. That was the first roundabout we had implemented in the county, and we wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, does the roundabout, or do the roundabouts allow for future expansion in terms of accommodating additional traffic lanes?
No, they don't. Well, I shouldn't say they don't. That was not a design consideration. So right now, traffic volumes on there, we've got lots of capacity in those roads and those roundabouts to accommodate what we see in the future. So it wasn't something that we considered or had planned for as part of the design.
Okay. And our final question, how are cyclists and pedestrians handled in the roundabout?
In Iroquois, we have paved shoulders, so the expectation there is that cyclists will, if they're trying to navigate the roundabout, that they will take into the roundabout, much like any vehicle. In Long Sault, there is the Waterfront Trail, which is a cyclist trail along all of the south end of SDNG. It's south of it, but we allow through pedestrian crossings cyclists to come up to the roundabout and then activate those crossings and cross if they need to. So most cyclists remain south, but some, if they do need to cross, we do have a protected crossing for them to cross.
Good stuff. Thank you, Ben, for a good glimpse into some work a little bit outside of Ottawa and the ongoing trend of more and more roundabouts in this part of the world. I of course, know Ben. He was in the next county to Leeds and Grenville when I was there up until the end of halfway through last year. So Ben and I are familiar with a number of the design challenges that we face out there with trucks and permits and heavy loads, and that's an ongoing concern. I'm glad that was a big part of your roundabout design, because it's certainly something, being on the border of Quebec where a lot of the manufacturing occurs, you certainly get the brunt of a lot of that commercial traffic. So once again, thank you, Ben, for taking a few minutes out of your busy day to come present this to us. And just remind people that on behalf of the Ottawa Valley branch, we'll be making a donation today to the Food Bank of Ottawa on your behalf. So thank you, Ben, for your time. Okay, we're going to now move on to our next speaker today. Damon, if you could turn on your video and microphone, and we'll get rolling here. There you are, Damon. Good. And so I'll just go ahead here, and unlike Ben, Damon, I don't want you to jump the gun and into your presentation. We want people to know who you are, so I'll get on with that. Damon Berlin has been at the forefront of Ottawa's light rail expansion over the course of the last decade, from constructing a tunnel through Ottawa's downtown core in stage 1 to adding 44 kilometers of rail to the O train network with stage 2. Damon has been responsible for providing stakeholder relations support in 2 of Ottawa's largest ever infrastructure projects. While construction may be impactful, Damon has played a critical role ensuring stakeholders are informed and heard as the benefits of light rail are extended to more communities through Ottawa. So Ben, here to talk about the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Stage 2 to Montreal Road. Ben, please take it away.
I think you mean Damon, and it will be my pleasure to do so. So first off, thank you very well. Let me just get this here because we need to actually connect the word share. And there we go. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, OPWA. We like to do acronyms at the City of Ottawa for inviting me here to talk and following through with Ben's thank for the previous speaker, pardon me. Ben, I want to thank you for your very circular presentation. And I was really impressed how you ended where you started, and just a great story. Thank you. As you've heard, my name's Damon Brillen. I've been working on this project and stage one for the last just under a decade now. When I started, I had no white hair and I had hair, and here we are. What we have in stage two is an incredible departure from stage one, where we expand the project in the west from all the way to Moody, where we're having a light maintenance and storage facility, Algonquin Station / College, in the east all the way to Trim Road, where there's a park and ride, and in the south all the way to Lime Bank, as well as a line over to, pardon me, to the airport. Now, when I started presenting about the stage one all those years ago, people would tell me, well, you're 30 years too late, and you're not even going to the airport, so why bother? Well, we're doing it, and by the way, we're doing it. So here we are. Better late than never, I like to think. The project has a lot, and we're going to focus. It's a huge project, and I was asked, Damon, we've already heard about the project. Can you talk about something specific? I'm going to draw your attention here to Montreal Station, Station Montreal. What we have is a real confluence. We're not talking about, oh, you're building a train, Damon, big deal. No, we're talking about we're building a train. We are not widening, but expanding the breadth of OR 174. We are doing structures with bridges and stations. And let's not forget the utilities, which was the theme of 2020 in our project, where we are relocating and replacing. Now, sorry, I've got the wrong screen here. There we are. The main thrust of the Stage 2.0 train extension is centered around light rail transit. As I mentioned, we are talking about more than just the structures and more than the stations, but we're talking about transforming the city in the context of major infrastructure work, legacy infrastructure at that. And so we're not just putting down tracks, but to complicate matters, to lay down tracks, there's so much civil engineering and structural construction that is required. And so in the east, where we have 12 kilometers of rail, 5 new stations and 4 bridges to construct, 7 bridges to rehabilitate, and 1 new pedestrian bridge and 3 major culverts, there's a significant amount. And can I say in the east, for those of you who have not been part of our presentations in the past, that it's quite incredible that 95% of Orleans will be within 5 kilometers of light rail station once we're completed this project. Now, the main objective in 2020 was the relocation, the renewal, installation of infrastructure, specifically your sewers, your hydro lines, your water mains, natural gas, telecommunications, the various different telecommunications and the infrastructure that it involves. Work has been progressing very well, and we have reached close to 40% completion across the project. And we do have some photos that just sort of demonstrate the type of relocations ongoing. Orleans Boulevard drainage work at the shoulder of OR 174. Cleary Avenue in the west, where we connect with the existing infrastructure, and Trim Road, where there will be a park and ride. There is a park and ride and an expanded park and ride, and that's where the station, which will be a terminus station, will go as well. Another key milestone in 2020 in the east was the construction start of the new 174 median rail bridge. So in order to connect trains from the existing transit alignment on the north side of the OR 174 into the median itself, a new dedicated rail bridge is being constructed, approximately 800 meters to the east of OR 174 and Blair Road interchange. From there, trains will travel east in the median of the OR 174 to the final stop at Trim Road, where we're renovating the existing OC Transport Park and Ride facility. We're also building future north and south ramps, which are required to accommodate the realignment of Trim Road and the construction of the future Trim Station. This is a side view of the median rail bridge that began during the winter that we've just recently said goodbye to. And some closer work that just shows some closer activities as they were preparing that in the winter. And you can see here just the progress that was made. So recently the construction team achieved a key milestone with the erection of the girders. 21 girders installed, representing 1,005 metric tons in total, and with a total bridge span of 242 meters. It took 4 nights to install, all while minimizing disruption to motorists. Not many people are on the road at that time. And the bridge is to be completed this summer. A nice profile shot of the girder installations, and looking really nice there. Now, I want to talk about the demolition of the Montreal Road interchange bridges, because as we have to relocate and renew infrastructure utilities, we also need to remove and rebuild some bridges. So over the course of the last year, OR 174 lanes were shifted, and 2 new bridges had to be built at the OR 174 Montreal Road interchange to create enough space which would allow work for the Guideway and for the dedicated construction of the rail to begin. So much of this project is move before you can do. And as much as I'm just going to sidetrack here because I do that a lot. We are converting a bus rapid transit system, or to anyone from Ottawa, our transitway system. This is the first conversion in North America. Well, it's not entirely true. There was a small section of the Canada line in Vancouver, but let's pretend that didn't happen. We're dedicating 44 kilometers of rail here. And we are first creating the detours for the buses to maintain service delivery, so that we can, in fact, then build the project. So buses, utilities, bridges, you name it, we're moving it, we're building it, we're moving it. Oh yeah, and now we're building it again. So in November, crews worked over 5 weeks and weekends, detouring traffic from the existing highway bridges to the 2 new bridges with a minimum closure time and impact to the traveling public. This work was critical to enable the demolition of the existing bridges over the course of the first weekend in December, and the start of the deep foundation in Montreal for Montreal Station in 21. As you can see, we do have the, I'm pointing with my finger, I apologize. Widening roadways and the confluence of interchanges, transit, a lot of competing interests in that area. Prior to the actual super demo weekend, the funding partners, this is a project that is made possible by equal funding from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments, participated in a news conference that was highlighting this milestone. And you can see here, Mayor Watson flanked by relevant ward councillors, or I would say affected ward councillors. So a tremendous amount of meticulous planning ensured that the demolition of the Montreal Bridge was a success. This is a significant project milestone for the Stage 2 team. As you can imagine, this going wrong would have impacted so many people that would have resulted in the kind of negative press that Kev, the constructor, and the city of Ottawa, the client did not want. And I think that they proved very successful in their ability to plan and execute. For 57 hours, beginning Friday night at 8 p.m., Montreal Road was completely closed beneath the OR 174 to vehicles, including OC Transpo buses, pedestrians, and cyclists. Crews operated various pieces of large construction equipment fitted with hydraulic hammers, buckets, forks, and shears worked around the clock to demolish 1,456 cubic meters of concrete and 160 metric tons of steel. I like big numbers. When I would talk about the excavation of the downtown tunnel, well, those were always some giant numbers that we would relate to size of Olympic swimming pools, or number of Olympic swimming pools. Here you can see some images following of the demolition. And you can understand and appreciate why Montreal Road had to be closed. Every detail was considered, including the provision of an OC Transpo shuttle service to ensure that the pedestrians and cyclists could get to the other side of the bridge along Montreal Road safely. As planned, Montreal Road was reopened to traffic and pedestrians at 5 a.m. Monday morning. And for some time after, concrete and steel debris resulting from the demolition was safely hauled away. There were no safety issues at this site during that takedown. I have a video that I'd like to play that, I mean, you've listened to me discuss Montreal Road. You've listened to me discuss the removal of a bridge. You've listened to me talk about the construction and the requirements and the necessities. And now I'm going to show you why words are so much undersold when it comes to a time-lapse video. So please enjoy this. Thank you for joining me on that wonderful time lapse. Now, as Ben said, you know, it's very important to showcase the finished product, which allows people to remember what this is all about. And in Ben's instance, I believe those projects are a year or two of construction, maybe less, and where ours we're looking at 5, 6 years, depending on the area being worked on. Contractually speaking, the east is to be completed substantial completion of construction in 2024, and in the west 2025. And so this is the future Montreal Station. As you can see, it is in the median of the OR 174. It is above Montreal Road. It will have, pardon me, it will have 2 station entrances. It will have 4 elevators. These are what denote the elevators. We have redundant elevators. So if there's 1, there's always 2. And in case there's 2, then there's 4. And that's to ensure that we don't end up in operations with an inability to get people accessibly to the station platforms. This is a nice platform view, and this is one of the areas where the platforms are covered. That's not the case in all of our stage 1 stations, which is a bit to the chagrin of many of the people who like to call and write. And of course, a lovely evening shot. You may or may not have seen other renderings for our project. And what I find ever so amazing is how for 365 days a year, it is a lovely sunny day or a clear evening, and it's never winter. The temperature always seems to be quite lovely and doesn't require any jackets. So I'd like to live in the rendering personally after the winters we do end up having. Now, Montreal Station, that construction is anticipated to begin in September 21. Completed in June 23. As I mentioned, it will have 2 entrances with bus connections. Well, these are the things that we just discussed. Now, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join and to listen. And it's nice, actually, to speak to people who have a professional interest in the project and the construction versus individuals who are personally impacted by the construction. 2 weeks ago, I gave 2 presentations to 2 different communities. One resulted in a veiled threat of violence, and the other one resulted in a public message board seeking me to be fired. So I hope that your questions are kinder, and I hope that you have enjoyed what we've had to say today. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Damon. There's nothing like seeing concrete and girders and steel for public works professionals. So I'm pretty sure you're not going to get the kind of reception you talked about, which I think many of us have lived through having gone to public meetings. But anyways, I digress. I will just ask Barb, we do have a number of questions here. So I'll ask Barb to go ahead and facilitate those questions.
Okay, so our first question is, what was the age of the old Montreal overpass? Was it close to life cycle or half cycle?
Now, I am sorry, I don't know the age of that piece of infrastructure, but it was not, well, it was in the way and it had to go. We had bridges in stage 1 that weren't going to support the infrastructure down by Bayview Station that were required to be removed and then rebuilt. This one was in the way. What I can do, however, is I'd be more than happy to get the information. Not being an engineer, being stakeholder relations, I won't have a lot of the technical details that you're probably looking for, but I can record the questions and I'd be more than happy to share them with Megan, who's been my conduit for this presentation.
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, the next question is, was traditional methodology used for construction of the new structures? And then it's in brackets, constructed ahead of the demolition.
No, our bridge was in the old bridge was in the way. We bring in the new rail bridge. So while my timeline was skewed in the way that I described it, the bridge was removed and then the rail bridge is being built.
Okay. Our final question is, how has the LRT transformed adjacent development? Is the city seeing more planning applications?
That's a great question. I actually, pre-COVID, did a lot of presentations to unaffected in terms of impacted groups. And one very interested group was the, is the Ottawa Real Estate Bureau and OREB. And they were always keen. And so I developed a development presentation. And I would have had these slides available, but it's kind of amazing if you think about it. If you think about Trillium Line and you think about the development that's occurring at Carling and Preston, these buildings started going up. Claridge's Icon, and there's another 3 towers that are going to replace a auto dealership. Now, this land has been available to these developers for a long time, but the construction didn't begin until the Trillium Line, which had been open for 20 years as a pilot project, not very long, didn't get a lot of people where they needed to go. But when they connected that to the Confederation Line, all of a sudden, now you're connecting to 11,000 people per direction per hour, should they wish to head south, connecting these people. So you saw a lot of development. You may remember Trinity development over by Bayview Yard. They're not just going for what they're allowed for, they're asking for additional stories. Now, they went and we did additional, or we call them secondary community design plans. And they were done for New Orchard and Cleary area, down around Lincoln Fields. And the point is like, well, when the original community design plans were done, they weren't taking into consideration the sheer volume of people that would be traveling by and the true opportunity to have some increased density. Now, in the east, this project goes through the median of the 174, but in the west, we cut through established mature neighborhoods. We're digging a 4-kilometer tunnel through the Sir Johnny Macdonald Parkway and then down through the Byron Linear Park. Now, the single family homes, they don't like it, but there's already a building that's being constructed at Woodruff in Richmond. There's another condominium building that's being constructed over Christie's Restaurant just across from Sherbourne Station. I've named just a few stations and a few areas where you're seeing this kind of development. But if you think that the stage 1 project's been open for 1.5 years, it's really quite amazing. And the other thing that I want to say is one of the slides that I used in my development presentation showed an aerial shot of Toronto. And what you see is a lot of low density and then these pockets of density. And then a slide would overlay all the stations. And truly, you would have a density development at every station, whereas on the line, you would have your regular single family homes or lower density homes. That to say is that development came after the lines were installed. And that's what we're seeing here today. And I do anticipate to see a lot more of this as this continues. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. So we've actually got 2 more questions that have come in that we hopefully can just get through quickly. Will the traffic lane shifts to accommodate construction of the median guideway be shifted again after the construction of the guideway is completed?
Great question. So I believe what you mean is that we've opened up a new lane on the outside of east and westbound OR 174. And that is because there's more room required for not only our track infrastructure, our station infrastructure, but the construction of all of that. Once the roadway has its new lanes and the inside lanes have been deleted, that will be the road configuration going forward after revenue surface.
Okay, thanks. So our last question, how are the LRT operations expected to be affected by stage 2 positively or negatively, given the challenges with stage 1?
Good question. Stage 1 had a lot of growing pains. And when I talk to people in the industry, not Ottawa's industry, but the train and major infrastructure industry, this is what they all call par for the course. This is how these major projects start up. Now, what we've seen is over the last year and a half, I'd say, fortunately, there hasn't been the pressures on the system that has allowed the system to fix the issues. A lot of the issues that we're fixing, sound mitigation as an example, for certain buildings, well, we're incorporating that into the design of our stage 2. So hopefully we're going to impact less. But your question wasn't about that. It's about, are we expecting people to use it? Now, our modeling shows an increase of Ottawa's population by 2031 that would bring our daily usability from 11,000 people per direction per hour up to 18,000 people per direction per hour. And that's something that our system can accommodate quite easily without any infrastructure changes, just with an increased headway. In terms of our capacity to be able to manage an increase of passengers, not pedestrians. We have 34 vehicles from stage 1 and an additional 38 in stage 2 to help meet those demands. Mind you, I will state I don't have a crystal ball. And will we see the requirements on a daily basis getting people to and from work? Are we going to be in traditional work environments? I can't answer that question. I can answer the question that we are building a world-class system and learning from our stage 1 example.
Good stuff. Some good questions there to challenge you a bit, Damon.
It's always a pleasure.
Well done. I'm sure you're quite used to that. Very informative. Again, I think Ottawa was one of the first cities to have such a comprehensive transitway system with the bus rapid transit. Was most certainly well ahead of the curve. Now we have transitioning to the LRT. You've got some good company. I know I saw Paul May there, and he can probably be called the king of LRT. You probably know Paul very well. So there's a number of places to draw experience on and share information. And I just have one fun question for you, Damon, is when is the bullet train coming? I'm joking, of course.
You know, it's
baby
funny
steps,
because
right? Baby steps.
Indeed. But when you go and you talk to the public, they're like, well, why aren't you doing the magnetic train? And why aren't you? Because they see one article about one thing that was done in Japan, and it's like, well, why aren't we doing it here? Well, we're not. But we're doing this, and it's going to be great.
We are. It's very exciting. Thank you, Damon. Very informative and exciting presentation, highlighting what's happening in Ottawa. Once again, on behalf of all our speakers, we are making a donation to the food bank. So once again, Damon, thank you for your time today to share this with everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Great. Okay, we're going to move on now to our next speaker. Elizabeth, if you would be so kind to turn on your, let me get a sharing here, sorry. Let me share. There we go. So thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us. So Elizabeth was going to be speaking about the municipal waste management here in Ottawa. And so Elizabeth Graham joined the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center during their startup operations in November 2001. She works with both the commercial and residential sectors to encourage activities that fulfill the center's mission to, quote, walk lightly on the environment, unquote. Elizabeth's primary focus is on community engagement and outreach via advertising, social media, special events, and other related promotion and education activities. Elizabeth holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Biology from the Nova Scotia Agricultural College in Dalhousie University. So welcome, Elizabeth, if you want to start sharing your screen and take away the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's great to be here with the association during Public Works Week. It's always hard to be the last presentation of the morning right before lunch, so I'll try to get through these slides and then we should have some time for questions. So I'm here to talk about municipal waste management at the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Centre. We're actually located 2 hours northwest of Ottawa, within Renfrew County, so just outside the city of Pembroke. We are a municipal partnership with the town of Petawawa, city of Pembroke, township of Laurentian Valley, and township of North Algona-Wilberforce. We are located in the township of Laurentian Valley, so that's considered the host municipality. So essentially we're owned and operated by those 4 partner municipalities. We do service all of Renfrew County, so we receive other waste materials from throughout the county. But our 4 partner municipalities, they fund the operation of the center if required. Obviously, our operations are based on the fact that we can recover some of our operating costs through the sale of our commodities and tipping fees. But if there are years where we need to recoup some operating costs, maybe we have a significant capital project that we have to undertake, we do have to go back to the municipalities to ask for contributions. We're a unique integrated waste management facility because all of our operations are located on one property. So we operate a material recovery facility, an in-vessel and windrow composting facility, construction and demolition site, a permanent household hazardous waste depot, as well as an electronic waste depot, a reuse center, and a landfill. And I'm going to talk about each of those as part of our presentation. So this is an aerial photo of our facility. So I'll walk you through a little bit of the layout of the property. So the main entrance, gate 1, is where most of the traffic comes through. That's where our scale house is located. So we're weighing all incoming material. Adjacent to the scale house, we have a public drop-off area. And that's just a standard sawtooth arrangement with roll-off bins. That's for small loads of recycling and garbage. The material recovery, the centralized composting facility, and our garage administrations is located in these buildings here. Toward the back of the property is the construction and demolition site. So the new buildings, the construction and demolition site, the scale house, those all became operational in January of 2002. And our landfill operations, which are outlined here, of the black dotted line shows the perimeter of the landfill, has actually been in operation since 1977. So the landfill, you can see it shows the different cells, 1 through cell 10. So cells 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 are completely capped or finished. We won't have any more landfill activities there. We're currently working in cell 5, getting ready to move into cells 7 and 9. You'll notice that when the landfill reaches capacity, probably in about 2023 was the most recent estimate, the finished cell 10 will actually cover where our outdoor windrow composting facility is. So we will have to relocate that. We do own property adjacent or across the road, which is in North Algona-Wilberforce, one of our other partner municipalities. So there is opportunities to maybe move some of the compost operations over there. Related to the landfill operations, we collect and treat landfill leachate. There's a groundwater interceptor trench here. So we're collecting all the surface and groundwater that's been impacted by landfill leachate. And then we also collect landfill gas as well. Those buildings are located here. At gate 3 this is where our permanent hazardous waste depot is, as well as our reuse center and our electronics waste depot as well. So our waste management system for the curbside municipalities, so 3 of our partners provide curbside collection through a contract that they have directly with Miller Waste. It's bi-weekly collection. So 1 week is garbage collection and yellow bin collection for bottles and cans and metals and plastics. And then the alternating week is blue box collection for paper and cardboard, and then green cart collection, which is for kitchen and yard waste. The municipalities use the large carts, the 240 liter carts. And then our one municipality, North Algona Wilberforce, operates on a depot system. So residents are bringing material to central locations within that community. They have a series of roll-off bins to collect recycling garbage. And they also collect kitchen organic waste using Moloch containers. So if anyone's not familiar with those, the Moloch containers, they're shown in this picture here with the green lids. Those are cylinder type containers. So the cylinders are actually 2/3 underground, and then 1/3 of the bin is above ground. They have bear resistant lids, and we provide the collection service for these bins. We have a truck that's equipped with a crane unit, and the crane connects to the lids of the Moloch containers, pulls the cylinder container out, positions it over the truck, you empty or open the bottom of the cylinder, material falls into the truck, and then you replace that cylinder back into the Moloch container. We also provide this collection service throughout Algonquin Park. They use the Moloch containers for all of their waste streams along Highway 60 corridor, and we provide that collection for that program as well. So material is all brought to the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center for processing. So we receive recycling within our 2-stream material recovery facility. So this truck is emptying the container recycling, so the glass, plastics, cans, bottles. Materials sorted using 2 different conveyor sorting lines. So this image here is showing the container recycling sorting line. So designated staff sorting each material type. So somebody's sorting out plastic bottles, somebody's sorting out milk cartons. We have a magnet that removes tin cans and an eddy current that removes aluminum cans. So once material is sorted, it's moved into a baler, and the baler makes these cubes of recycling. And of course, we ship these or sell these, we ship them off site to be processed into new goods. Our in-vessel composting facility is mainly for composting of the green cart materials, so the residential food and yard waste that's collected through the green cart program. We do have some commercial material that comes in, as I mentioned, Algonquin Park. A few grocery stores and restaurants also bring kitchen waste to us. So materials dumped inside our building, we have to do a pre-sort on the organic material to pick out compostable items. That includes plastics. We're a no plastics program, including biodegradable and compostable plastics. That's not permitted in our program. Once material is sorted, then it goes through a shredder, and then we load it into our mixer. And the mixing process is just to get that right carbon-nitrogen ratio. From there, we load it into one of 11 compost, in-vessel compost containers that we have. We circulate air through those materials. We monitor the temperature and oxygen. It stays in there for about 2 weeks. And then we empty it out onto a paved area or outdoor windrow composting area. And they form them into windrows, and that they just continue to compost and cure and finish the composting process. We screen the material. We have a screener, and then the finished product is actually made available for agricultural use. Interestingly enough, the green cart material compost that we produce is really high in salt. And so we make this primarily for use either on site in our landscaping needs, or as I said, to the agricultural community. Our outdoor windrow composting area, as I mentioned, is a paved area. It's primarily for composting of the leaf and yard waste. And this is the material that's usually collected in the spring and fall by the municipalities. Residents put out bags and or material out in paper bags, or what residents drop off at our site for composting. So we bring in a shredder or grinder to process this material, and it just composts in windrows for about 6 months. And then we screen it. And this is the product that we make available to residents. They come in with their trucks or trailers and purchase this material in bulk. It's loose, and we sell it for $25 a cubic yard. Our construction and demolition area houses our wood waste, drywall, shingles. There's also an area for the storage of tires and scrap metal, which are shipped off site for recycling. The wood waste and shingles are ground up. Drywall is screened and ground up, and what's left is made also available to the agricultural community, and it's used as a soil amendment. Here's the grinding of the shingles and the wood waste, and we are using these on-site applications as alternative daily cover at the landfill, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get into the landfill. This is our permanent hazardous waste depot. So this is open year round. It's available to residents for drop off of paints, propane tanks, oils, materials like that. We also host special event days where residents can drop off at convenient locations throughout the community. Their operation of the environmental days has been impacted by COVID last year and this year as well, but we're hoping to have those events a little bit later on this summer. Our electronic drop-off depot, we just have small roll-off bins that are available for residents to drop off their TVs, computers, monitors, and those are shipped or picked up by a local processor who takes them back to his warehouse just outside Pembroke, sorts them, and then they're shipped to a licensed electronics recycler. This is our reuse center. We were able to repurpose an old garage that we had on site, and the reuse center is for residents to drop off usable household goods. So if people have an old desk, maybe an old dresser, an old window door, material like that, they can leave that here. There's no fee to drop off, and then residents can come in and remove those items for no fee. And of course, all those programs exist to extend the life of our landfill site. We're expect to reach capacity in 2023, and the actual landfill site has been operating since 1977. I believe I mentioned that. And then we took over, or the group of municipalities took over operation in January of 2002. Our leachate treatment facility has been operational since 2003. Our landfill gas collection system has been operational since 2009 with an expansion just last summer in 2020. And our poplar tree plantation and vegetation management with sheep. I'd like to talk about that as well. So our landfill operations, fairly standard landfill receiving municipal landfill site. Waste is received at the active tipping phase. We're inspecting material. We're looking for material that we can't accept or don't want in the landfill, but also material we would encourage or want our contractors and residents to divert to recycling or construction and demolition. So when we see a load that maybe comes in, it contains a significant amount of cardboard, we're going to charge a higher fee to that customer to encourage the separation of that material. We compact material with our landfill compactor, and then we have to cover it daily. We can either use a tarping system, use gravel that we have on site as a gravel source, or we can use alternative daily covers. I mentioned that we use shingles, ground up shingles and wood waste, but we can also use bulky waste as alternative daily covers. So this is the waste materials that are collected during the spring and fall large item collections that the municipalities provide, mattresses, coaches, material like that. So we grind that up and use it as alternative daily cover as well. And it really is beneficial because it helps us reduce the volume of those materials, and it's much easier to handle. If anyone's worked in municipal waste management, landfill operations, you know it's nearly impossible to compact and bury a mattress, for example. It's really hard on the equipment. and hard to manage. So by grinding that bulky waste, we're reducing the volume going into our landfill, but then we also get to use it kind of as one more beneficial application before it finishes its life in the landfill. Our landfill leachate treatment system. So as I mentioned, we're collecting surface and groundwater that's been impacted by landfill leachate. That's collected through a groundwater interceptor trench and different collection points that we have at the site. The water travels to the pumping station and then it's pumped into the pond. This settling or retention pond has 1 million liter capacity. From the pond, it's emptying into an underground recirculation tank. And then from there, it's pumped into the different treatment cells. So there's 4 different treatment cells, each performing a different function. They have different mediums in them: sand, gravel, wood chips. Bacteria plays a really important in the treatment of the landfill leachate. And then it's discharged from cell 4 into the natural wetland that's around the site. This is the retention pond that I mentioned. You can see some of the solids have settled out. We're aerating it to help with the treatment of the water. We found that the bacteria are very dependent on temperature, quite sensitive to temperature. And we were having a hard time keeping the system operational in the colder temperatures, especially in the spring when the runoff was quite cold from the snow melt. So a few years ago, we purchased a wood burning outdoor furnace, and it heats water that heats a coil that's inserted into that recirculation tank. So it increases the temperature of the water enough that the bacteria stay active all winter long, and we can handle the increased flows much better in the spring. This is what the treatment bed looks like. Right now, it's covered in wood chips, so they help with the filtration of the water, but also act as insulation. And then the grassy area in the back there, this is the landfill. These are closed areas of the landfill where there'll be no more garbage at it. These areas have been completely capped and finished off. We also collect landfill gas. We have 28 wells was the original installation. And then, as I mentioned, we expanded it last summer to add an additional 12 wells. So the wells are drilled down into the garbage, down into the landfill, into the garbage, and hooked up to a gas extraction plant that is on vacuum. It draws the gas out of the landfill. And we flare it right now. It's an enclosed flare, that gray stack there. At this point, we don't generate enough gas to make sense to convert it into a usable heat or electricity source. We create a fairly small amount compared to larger landfills. So based on the technology that exists at this point, we just finished evaluating the feasibility of doing that when we added the additional 12 wells. And I think the payback time is 15, 20 years. It's quite significant, which is hard for the municipalities to, put in place. So as technology changes, as the landfill grows and we add additional wells, it's possible that we will be able to use that as a heat source or electricity. Another thing that we've done at our landfill is planted poplar trees. So poplar trees grow really fast. They uptake a lot of water when they're completely mature. So the larger or more established plantation that's on the left there has probably been in place for maybe 6 years or so. And that's planted along the groundwater interceptor trench for the landfill leachate treatment system. And the idea behind the poplar tree plantation is that will help absorb some of the water and treat and filter the water for us. So it's going to reduce or lessen the demand on the leachate treatment system. The other picture, kind of beside the roadway and that grassy berm there, we have additional poplars planted. Again, that will help absorb some of the water that's flowing off the landfill here. What we did this spring was we actually planted an additional 1,000 poplar trees, and we're going to irrigate those with landfill leachate that we collect and pump into this holding tank. We're going to mix or dilute it some with water from an old well that we have on site. And like I said, that'll irrigate the poplar trees, but it'll also, again, hopefully lessen the demand on our leachate treatment system. That water will still go through the landfill and be treated through the system. But we know that this system, we have to expand it, possibly starting construction this year or into next year at a significant cost for the municipalities. So if we can prolong that or reduce the demand on our current system, make sure it remains operational and efficient, it'll be, a benefit to the municipalities for sure. Another thing that we have to do at our site is vegetation management. So in the closed or capped areas of the landfill that have their topsoil and grass seed or vegetation applied, we have to mow those or keep them cut at least annually. And that's to help look for any kind of seepage or anything that's coming out of the landfill. So we can do that with mechanical means, bring in a brush hog and do that. But we were aware of some municipalities throughout North America who had used different livestock, small livestock, to manage vegetation. Mostly goats were the examples we found, but we were able to partner with a local farmer who needed some grazing areas for her sheep herd. So she brings her sheep over. This will be our third spring doing this. We have an electric fence up to help protect them from predators, and the sheep just graze happily all summer, and they help keep the vegetation down at the site. Obviously concern for any municipal operation, health and safety, but what we've really seen an alarming rate recently is landfill fires that have been connected to lithium ion batteries. We've had at least last year, I think we had 7 fires that were associated to be from, somebody throws a laptop, an old cell phone, maybe their e-reader in the garbage, whether it's by mistake or on purpose. Our equipment compacts that, punctures the unit and the battery. And once that mixes with the moisture and air, it causes a reaction and sparks. Luckily, in all the instances with fires related to lithium ion batteries, our staff have seen them, identified it, and were able to remove the battery away from the garbage and extinguish the fires. We did have a significant fire on site 2 summers ago where our bulky waste piles, so that bulky waste, the mattresses and furniture that we were getting ready to grind and shred, caught on fire. We don't know why. The reason was never identified. But obviously, landfill fires are a huge safety concern. They can smolder for days. They can go undetected underground for days. So we were lucky in this instance with the large fire that there was very little equipment damage. Nobody was harmed, no building damage or anything, but a real concern for the community and the operation of the site. And of course, our programs, only rely on what residents are putting into our bins. And that's why public education is so important. So, this is what my focus really is. This is what I do on behalf of the municipalities at the center. Public engagement, talking to your residents, reminding them constantly about the proper disposal of items, reminding them of the why. We need to protect our employees. Just last week, we had a used gasoline in a 2-liter pop bottle come up on the recycling line. So it's a real hazard for the staff. So unfortunately, a lot of that community engagement has been virtual over the last year, but I'm certainly looking forward to a time when I can get back out into the community and engage with our residents, because it's so important. So there's my contact information. Feel free to connect with us on social media as well. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions. And as I said, public education is my forte. So if there's any more technical questions, I can certainly jot them down and find the answer out for you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. There are a few questions here, so I'll turn it back over to Barb to facilitate those.
Great, thank you.
Okay, our first question. Is the wood construction waste used as a heat source in the leachate treatment?
No, it's not. So we actually either purchased dry firewood or we did a large harvest of timber that we had to remove for our landfill operations. as we get ready to expand into the cells. So we've used that firewood as well, but no, we buy like dry firewood. I think they looked at the opportunities for burning some of the wood waste that came in, but at this point, because we already have a use for it as alternative daily cover. And I should mention too, some of the clean wood, like the brush and some of the, you know, clean 2x4s that haven't been painted, we can use that in the composting process as well.
Okay, and here's another kind of related question. Could the flare off be used to heat the lagoon water in the winter?
Yeah. I believe that when we were looking at the expansion of the landfill gas collection system and if it would be feasible to convert that into a heat source or electricity, that's one of the things that they did consider. And I believe at the time the discussion was, unfortunately, the distance that it's required. If you'll remember from the aerial photo, the leachate treatment system is on one side of the landfill and the landfill gas collection is on the other side. So I think they thought that would impede the use of the gas as a heat source. What would probably make more sense and might be more feasible in the future is if we can use it as a heat source for the compost operations because it's located fairly close to the composting operations. So like I said, certainly those things were discussed and considered, but at the time it just was not economically feasible to put in place.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how many meters cubed of leachate are handled in a day? And also curious about those volumes in the winter versus the summer.
Yeah, for sure. Let me see, I had just, so at our peak during the spring, we're about 135,000 liters a day. So that's in liters. So I think during the summer months, winter when it's a lot drier, those are down like in the 80, 90,000 liters a day, but peak. And I think the capacity of the site is like around 140, 145,000 liters a day. So sometimes in the spring, we're close to reaching the design capacity of the system. So yeah, that's how much water we're processing per day.
Okay. All right, I've got one last question here.
Sure.
Is the green cart compost material sold to anyone? Can the public buy it?
Yeah, so the compost we make from the green carts, I think I mentioned, is a lot higher in salt, and it tends to have other items in it, you know, like a plastic fork or knife that got through and didn't come out in the sorting or the screening process. So the agricultural community uses the stuff no problem. They apply it to their crops. We basically can't keep it in supply. Now, last summer, we had to cap a lot of areas, finished areas of the landfill. So we were able to use the compost on site as well. And then the leaf and yard waste compost, that's a bit of a better quality, and that's what residents can come in and purchase. They can purchase that finished product for $25 a cubic yard. We sell it year round. We're sold out right now, but have it available, you know, in the spring, right through summer and into the fall. And it's quite popular as well, especially this year. We were getting calls for material in March, people getting ready to start their gardens and anxious to, you know, get out in their gardens again this year, which is great to see.
I think those are all the questions. Thank you, Barb. Great presentation, Elizabeth. I think I most certainly took away the impact of batteries in the fires and how much of an impact that has to the system. And I'll make sure that I never ever casually throw another battery in the garbage. That's for sure. Knowing that impact. So is certainly a message for everybody that, you know, most municipalities, most places, most public places have an opportunity for you to drop off your batteries. So
exactly, yeah.
Even if you think you're doing a simple thing like one battery, please take the time and the effort. I do Barb, I think we're kind of right at the time limit here, so we're going to save those questions, and maybe Elizabeth can answer them back in writing to other people if we don't mind. So thank you, Elizabeth, again for your informative presentation. And again, on behalf of all our speakers, we're making a donation to the food bank in your name and in the name of all our speakers today. So
Great,
once again, thank you for being with us today and giving up your valuable time.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on now just to the last couple of slides we have here. Just to let you know our agenda for tomorrow, the Ottawa Valley branch is promoting one more day of speakers and presentations here. We're going to tomorrow, we're going to branch out a little bit outside of Ottawa. We're going to go out to Regina and also bring it home a little closer to Peterborough on a couple of interesting presentations there. So please, if you haven't already, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to let you know that if you go to the, if you go to the website that you see here, ontario.cpw.net, which is where most of you went to sign up, you will get to this website. And then if you just click on the logo, you will see a couple of things I want to bring to your attention. If you missed one of our great presentations, you can see here that we have been videotaping them, so you can watch the video on them. And just to remind you again, even today, there's a couple of sessions this afternoon on using GPS on vehicles, and some really interesting stuff on technology, on artificial intelligence, and mobile and cloud-based technologies. So folks, don't hesitate to go to that site again. Again, it's CPWA, ontario.cpwa.net. Please go and check out our program for the rest of the week. And on behalf of everybody here and the team that put together today and our speakers, I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you at another session. Thank you and goodbye.